Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring the world of scaling businesses, and we've got some great source material to work with, transcripts from 2 entrepreneur interviews featured on ScaleUp Radio, hosted by Kevin and Granger, the founders of Smart 90.
Yeah, ScaleUp Radio is a fantastic resource, Ray. I mean, they're all about helping founders get out of their own way, so to speak, unlock that growth potential.
Exactly. And what's really cool is that we're going to hear directly from 2 entrepreneurs who've actually walked the walk. They've been in the trenches and scaled their businesses. So we're going to be able to extract some real-world lessons and advice from their journeys.
Sounds good to me. Real stories, real challenges, real triumphs. Let's get into it.
All right. So our first entrepreneur is Corrine Amos. Now, she's got quite the story. First of all, she's the founder of not 1, but 2 businesses.
2? Wow, impressive.
Yeah. The first one is Coco Kiki, a dungaree brand with a very cool mission. They create high-quality dungarees while supporting vulnerable communities in India.
Oh, wow. That's a really interesting combination. Fashion and social impact. It's great to see a company blending those 2 worlds.
Right. And her second business is Cut Loose London, a video production company that's worked with some huge names. Nike, IKEA, you name it.
That's a pretty diverse portfolio. What I find so interesting is that she actually uses Cut Loose London to fund Coco and Kiki, like a built-in safety net for her social enterprise.
Yeah. It's really smart, right? Provides that financial stability.
Mm.
So before we get into the specifics of her businesses, I have to share something truly remarkable about Corrine. Are you ready for this?
I'm all ears. Hit me.
She rowed across the Atlantic Ocean.
What? No way. Seriously, the entire Atlantic Ocean?
Yep, 42 days at sea.
Wow. Just wow. I can't even imagine the kind of determination and resilience that takes. I mean, that's just incredible.
I know, right? It just blows my mind. So I'm super curious to hear how she connects that experience to her entrepreneurial journey.
Me too. I bet there's some incredible parallels there. The mental toughness, the problem-solving skills, the ability to just keep going when things get tough.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, so let's start with Coco and Kiki. It's a dungaree brand, but as I mentioned, there's a much deeper story there. Corrine talks about wanting to create something that was both stylish and sustainable. A brand that people could feel good about wearing.
Yeah, that really resonates with consumers today, right? That desire for ethical and transparent production.
Definitely. And she's really passionate about those things.
Yeah.
Transparency, ethical production. It's at the core of her brand.
Which is fantastic to see, especially in the fashion industry.
Yeah.
Which, let's face it, often faces a lot of criticism for its environmental and social impact.
Absolutely. And she doesn't shy away from talking about the challenges. You know, she talks about how hard it was to find truly ethical manufacturers in India.
I can imagine it's a tough task, vetting factories, supply chains. It's a complex process.
Yeah. And to make sure the factories were meeting her standards, she actually went undercover posing as a buyer.
Wow. Now that's dedication. Talk about going the extra mile.
Isn't that incredible?
Huh.
So that's Coco and Kiki, but now let's shift gears a bit and talk about that Atlantic row, 42 days at sea, sleep deprivation, massive waves. I mean, it sounds absolutely grueling.
It boggles the mind. Honestly, I'm dying to know, what kind of mindset do you need to endure something like that? And how do those lessons translate to the business world?
Right. Well, Corrine talks about how it really forced her to confront her own limitations and develop this deep sense of resilience. She had to learn to problem solve on the fly, adapt to constantly changing conditions, and never give up, even when things got really, really tough.
Those are invaluable skills for any entrepreneur, right? I mean, think about it. Staying calm under pressure, thinking creatively, finding a way forward when it seems like there's no way forward.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. Okay, you ready for this?
Lay it on me.
Corrine says that her biggest challenge wasn't actually rowing the Atlantic.
It wasn't. I mean, come on. What could be tougher than that?
Well, according to her, it was managing people.
Managing people. Really? I mean, I guess that makes sense. It is one of the biggest challenges entrepreneurs face, right?
Yeah.
Building a team, leading effectively. It's not easy.
Yeah. And she had this funny anecdote about sending this brilliant but kind of difficult videographer on a job. And the client called her up complaining that he was, well, a bit of a nightmare to work with.
Oh, boy. I've been there.
It's tough when you have someone who's super talented but maybe lacks those essential people skills.
Right. And it made her realize that technical skills are only part of the equation. You need people who are both talented and easy to collaborate with.
So true. You need that right mix of personalities.
Yeah.
Especially in a creative field like video production, where collaboration is key.
Absolutely. All right, so that's Corrine's story. Now let's move on to our second entrepreneur, Roman Loban. He's more of a tech guy, and he's got 2 businesses under his belt as well, Zebra and FMPay.
2 businesses. All right, Rome is keeping busy too. What are these ones all about?
So Zebra is a mobile app designed to simplify business operations for micro businesses. You know, those one or two person shows trying to do it all? Ah, yeah, the solopreneurs, the side hustlers, the ones wearing all the hats.
Exactly. So Zebra helps them with things like payments, website creation, customer management, all in one place.
That's a pretty sweet deal. Especially for those who might be intimidated by technology or just don't have the bandwidth for a bunch of different systems.
And then there's FMPay, his fintech company that provides card acquiring services.
Okay, so we've got a mobile app simplifying business and a fintech company handling payments. What's Roman's style like?
Well, what's really interesting about him is that he bootstrapped both of these businesses.
No kidding. Both of them. That's impressive. A real believer in doing it yourself.
Yeah. He's also really big on staying local, keeping things close to home, you know. And he admits to struggling with letting go of control.
Ah, yeah, that's a common one. The tension between wanting to maintain control and the need to delegate as the business grows.
And he had to face that head on when the pandemic hit, because he was suddenly building his core team remotely, which definitely wasn't part of the plan.
Yeah, that's a curveball for sure. Building a team remotely, it's a whole different ballgame.
He talks about trying to create that close-knit team spirit through video calls and online meetings, which can be tough.
Definitely. It's hard to replicate that in-person dynamic virtually, but I'm sure he found ways to make it work.
Yeah, we'll dive into those details a bit later, but first I want to dig a little deeper into Zebra. It's such a clever solution for micro businesses, especially those just starting out.
Makes sense. It's all about removing those barriers to entry, right? Making technology accessible to everyone, regardless of their tech background.
Exactly. And you know what else? His biggest challenge, like Corrine, is finding and empowering the right people.
It never ends, does it? No matter what kind of business you're running, that seems to be the universal challenge. Finding those A players, building that dream team.
It's the people. It always comes back to the people.
So tell me, what were some of the specific hiring hurdles Roman had to overcome? I'm curious to hear how his experience compares to Corrine's.
Well, he initially relied heavily on remote workers,
Right.
especially during the pandemic, when everyone was forced to go virtual.
Right out of necessity.
Yeah. But eventually, he realized that he really valued having a strong local team, people he could connect with face to face.
That's interesting, how his perspective shifted, from embracing remote work to actively seeking out that local talent.
Yeah. It seems like it was a combination of things.
Yeah.
He mentions that communication was just smoother, more nuanced in person. And having a local team fostered a stronger sense of community and purpose, which for Roman seems to be really important.
Yeah, he's all about that local connection. Remember how he's really passionate about building a thriving Southwest economy where local businesses support each other?
Yeah, I remember. And it ties into his bootstrapping philosophy too, right? Like he wants to create those same opportunities for other micro businesses in his region. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the specific challenges they faced while scaling. Corrine had this really great insight about celebrating small wins.
Small wins. Interesting. I feel like that's something a lot of entrepreneurs forget to do right. They're so focused on the big picture that they overlook those little victories along the way.
Exactly. And she said that in the early days of Coco and Kiki, she was so fixated on the end goal that she often missed those little wins that kept her motivated.
It's easy to get caught up in the destination and forget to enjoy the journey. Right?
She actually drew a parallel to her Atlantic rowing experience.
Oh, wow. I bet that's a pretty powerful analogy.
Yeah, she said that during those 42 days at sea, she had no choice but to focus on the present moment, to appreciate each small step forward.
And that makes total sense, right? When you're facing a challenge of that magnitude, you have to break it down into manageable chunks.
Right, otherwise it's just too overwhelming.
So how about Roman? What were some of the challenges he had to overcome?
Well, his was a little bit different, but equally relatable. It was about letting go of control.
Ah, yeah, the classic control freak entrepreneur. I've seen that one a few times.
As a bootstrapper, he was used to making all the decisions. But as his businesses grew, he realized he couldn't do everything himself.
So he had to learn to delegate.
Exactly. And it sounds like it was a real process for him. He talks about having to shift his mindset from doing everything himself to focusing on strategy and delegating tasks to his team.
Trusting others to execute his vision.
Right. And learning to trust their expertise and let them own their areas of responsibility.
Which can be really tough for some entrepreneurs, right? Especially those who are used to being in the driver's seat all the time.
Definitely. Okay, so lead generation and customer acquisition. That's a big one for any business looking to scale. Corrine had a really interesting approach for Coco and Kiki. She was super deliberate about defining her ideal customer.
Makes sense, right? Especially with a niche market like ethical fashion. You got to know who you're talking to.
Exactly. And she talked about experimenting with different platforms like TikTok to reach that audience.
TikTok, interesting. It's definitely become a powerful marketing tool.
But she also emphasized the importance of building a strong brand identity that resonates with her target market.
So it's not just about chasing friends, it's about creating a brand that truly stands for something.
Right. Roman, on the other hand, took a more strategic approach with FMPay. He focused on building the company's infrastructure and securing those all-important partnerships with major card schemes.
Okay, so more of a B2B approach, building those strategic alliances.
Exactly. And he also talked about the importance of providing personalized support to their customers. He believes in building relationships and going the extra mile to help businesses integrate their payment systems seamlessly.
That human touch goes a long way, especially in a world that's becoming increasingly automated and impersonal.
Absolutely. Okay, so we can't talk about scaling without talking about hiring, right? Both Corrine and Roman emphasized how crucial it was to find the right people.
Yeah, it's the foundation of any successful business, right? You can have the best product or service in the world, but without a great team, it's going nowhere.
And both of them had to adapt their hiring strategies as their businesses grew. Remember Corrine's beer test?
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. It's all about finding people who are a good cultural fit, right?
Exactly. Especially in a creative field like video production, where collaboration is key.
Yeah, you need people who can work together harmoniously, bounce ideas off each other, and, have a beer together at the end of the day.
Right. Now, Roman's approach to hiring was a bit different. Initially, he relied on referrals and local recruitment agencies, but he eventually realized that his most successful hires came from building relationships with people who were passionate about his vision.
So it was less about ticking boxes on a resume and more about finding people who were genuinely excited about the company's mission.
Exactly. And he even mentions how some of his best hires were people without prior experience in the industry.
Really? Wow, that's
Yeah.
interesting. So he was willing to take a chance on people who might not have had the traditional qualifications, but who had the right attitude and aptitude.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it paid off for him.
Yeah.
All right, so we can't forget about the elephant in the room. The pandemic.
The pandemic. That threw everyone for a loop.
Yeah.
How did our entrepreneurs weather that storm?
Well, it definitely threw a wrench into everyone's plans. Corrine had to navigate supply chain disruptions, find new ways to connect with customers online, and basically rethink her entire business model.
Talk about a crash course in adaptability and resilience.
And Roman had to build his entire core team remotely, which, as we discussed earlier, presented its own set of challenges.
Yeah, building trust and a strong company culture remotely. It takes a lot of effort and intentionality.
And Roman actually had a really insightful point about company culture. He said that culture isn't just about perks and benefits. It's about what people think is normal within the organization.
Yeah, the unwritten rules, the shared values, the way people interact with each other.
Exactly. And that's something that needs to be consciously cultivated, whether you're working remotely in a hybrid model or fully in person.
Absolutely. All right, so we've talked about the challenges, but I think it's also important to acknowledge their successes, right? I mean, despite facing some pretty significant hurdles, both Corrine and Roman have managed to build resilient businesses and make a positive impact in their communities.
Absolutely. They were both incredibly inspiring stories.
Right.
But what have they actually achieved? What tangible results have they seen from all their hard work? Well, for Corrine, it's really been about building a brand that aligns with her values.
Yeah.
Coco and Kiki. It's not just about selling dungarees. It's about empowering communities and creating a more sustainable fashion industry.
Right. It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And she's done that by building a truly ethical supply chain, ensuring fair wages and safe working conditions for everyone involved.
Exactly. And she's managed to do all of that while running a successful video production company. It's pretty amazing.
And let's not forget, she's also taken those incredible lessons from her Atlantic rowing experience and applied them to her business. That resilience, that mental toughness. Those are invaluable assets when you're facing the challenges of entrepreneurship.
For sure. So how about Roman? What's he accomplished?
Well, he's built 2 businesses from scratch, bootstrapped both of them, which is no small feat. And he's done it all while staying true to his vision of empowering local businesses.
He's created those tools and services that micro businesses really need.
And he's proven that you don't need outside funding to be successful.
It might take a little longer, a little more sweat equity, but it can be done.
And the rewards can be even sweeter sometimes when you've built something entirely on your own terms.
Absolutely. And one thing that both Corrine and Roman have in common is that they've built incredible teams. Strong, dedicated people who share their passion and are committed to their vision.
And that's a testament to their leadership skills, right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, a company's success hinges on its people.
So what can we learn from these two entrepreneurs? What are the key takeaways here?
Well, I think the biggest one is that there's no single path to success. Corrine found inspiration in other entrepreneur stories. Roman was driven by a personal frustration with existing solutions.
Right. So it's really about finding what works for you, what ignites your passion, what keeps you going when things get tough.
And it's about being adaptable, willing to pivot when you need to, and embracing the learning process that comes with building something new.
Couldn't agree more. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought-provoking question. Okay. Think about your own entrepreneurial journey. Where do you find your inspiration? What problem are you passionate about solving?
Because within those answers lies the potential for something truly extraordinary.
So go out there, explore, experiment, and embrace the incredible world of entrepreneurship. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll be featuring your story on the Deep Dive.